Hey, Matt, do you know the French cast iron cookware? I think mine is called La Crusette or something like that. It's you
La
can get
Crusette?
some. Yeah, maybe I don't know how to speak French, but it's those big 13, 14 quarts with the lid. That's what I use. Have you used your camera or seen anything on the web to show how? I mean, I think those just really distribute the heat extremely uniform, don't they?
I think that, yeah, they work wonderfully.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
But the problem is that they're really heavy and really expensive.
Yeah, really.
And I know you like to make larger batches, so I could just
Right.
imagine you having to do pot after pot after pot because you know how it boils up, and I would hate to be that could be an all-day affair. But certainly if you're going to make like a 1-gallon batch or a 3-gallon batch, I think that would work just great.
Well, and
if
I
you
actually
drop
don't.
them-
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Hamish.
So if you drop them, they break a
Yep.
tile or break a toe. So they have some OH&S issues in that regard as well.
And I don't know. I don't think I've ever cooked all of my honey in any boucher that I've made. It's always been a partial cook, and then the rest just natural.
Oh, so you do that? Okay.
Yeah. And I actually think most of the time when somebody gets on the web and they show us their little, paper plate color wheel, I always feel like they pick a darker color than what I would go with personally.
I tend to agree with that. I see them like showing off, and it's almost black, and I'm like going, no, I'm not really feeling that. I mean, even I don't know what it tastes like, but just from a visual, I look at it and go, I don't think so.
Well,
but the thing is, once you add more honey to it or you dilute it, it's going to be this lovely rich red instead of the black that it looks like.
True, yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
I would want it.
But I think I equate the black to the burnt, acrid smell and taste that you never will get away from. In fact, I'm looking at Jaden posted a picture back at 725, and I generally go with something around that number 5 or so, kind of like the Werther's caramel candies that you can buy
like
somewhere or remember the old hard butterscotch candies Grandpa used to give us back in the day? Yeah.
Those things.
I kind of
so
go
good.
somewhere in there, and because I don't think you have to go too much farther, and you still get the notes that we're looking for, or at least what I look for.
I think you're right. It's funny though. I find that some people that are, let's say, bochet haters, when you give them something like that, they say, "Well, I can't really taste the burnt notes." It's like,
Right.
well, bochet doesn't need to be that.
I know.
It's supposed to be burnt.
My first response would be, "Thank you."
Yeah.
Actually, looking at that image that Jaden did put up, you say you want number 5. This is a perfect example of what we've said a few times already tonight, with how quickly it goes from nicely golden to, oh my God, it's gone too far. And
That's right.
if you look at that,
That's
it's a real gentle increase from 1 through 4. 5, you say, is perfect. And the very next sample is like black. Well, it's not, but it's very dark in comparison.
Root beer brown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But suddenly, it just suddenly made that, and you don't imagine he's waited 20 minutes between samples. He was taking them pretty regularly, so that gives you an idea of just how quickly it will turn. Now, I had one other question for Matt. You brought up before how, as a home brewer, you were always trying to make beer and things to a style. This is a problem that, as someone who runs a wine show over here in Australia and does a lot of mead in there, I've always had a lot of problems with and difficulties with the judges and getting to judge it. And one of the things that with wine and beer, the very first tick box is it to style? How much does it resemble what we expect when you say bochet? What do we expect when you say bochet? Do we need subclasses for this? What do we expect when you say? Well, we sort of know what to expect when we say traditional, but with some of the other varieties as well. But let's focus on bochet because that's what we're talking about. when there's a bochet in the Mesa Cup, and I put one in last year, and I did not call out bochet. I just put it in the other category because it wasn't burnt, and I didn't want people to be going, oh, this is going to be one of those funny new burnt bochet things. It was very subtle. It had just added to the caramelized features. It had added to the color a lot, and it was something like 10% lightly caramelized and 90% honey. So it was a very small effect that it had, but it was very significant when you compared it to the traditional that I made that was almost semi-en blanc color out of the exact same honey, where this one looked like a Scotch whiskey, a nice dark Scotch whiskey. And like it really made a difference there. But so what are we expecting when you say bochet, and when should you write bochet in a competition, and when should you not? And what do we need to do about this? And is this a better question for the AMMA and for your presentation?
It's troublesome. So depending on who you ask, let's just say for the BJCP, because there are historic recipes, be it small amounts of them, that basically say burn the hell out of it. But they also they call out spices like grains of paradise. So a bochet just is not that historic recipe. When I actually put that question out to the folks on the Mead Makers, now the Modern Mead Makers group, what is the key indicator that a mead is a said it must have either a caramelized or burnt / roasted honey character. So the question is we got to get away from being an historic style because if it's an historic style, it's burnt acrid with spices. And I just don't think that's the modern version. Did I lose you?
Nope.
No, you're good.
Oh, okay. So I think the modern version of bochet is having some at the very least caramelized or roasted honey character. To what degree do we need to specify that? I don't know. But frankly, when I put entries in for my meads, I basically spell out caramelized honey. So I don't even bother with the term bochet, frankly. But I still put it in the experimental category. So because it would be something different, it's like oak is acceptable, but if I put cedar in, then it's not. It's an experimental, right? So it's the same thing here when I caramelize it, which is so funny because for years that was the norm, right? People would heat their honey and skim the scum and the whole bit, and then they go, no, you're ruining the aromas, which is true. But there's some degree over that it becomes a bochet, and what that threshold is, I would say, is at least some kind of, medium light caramelized notes. That's when it becomes a bochet. But I basically in competitions just avoided the term bochet to say it's caramelized honey.
Well, and I don't think that we can really set that many, standardized parameters. I mean, let's take, for instance, the sizer category. As we all know, that can vary all over the place and yet still fit perfectly in the style parameters. And so I think that probably a bochet would have to be as loosely measured in that regard as well, providing that you do get some of the caramelization. And I guess after that, I would have to say that probably anything goes as long as it's, within balance and all, like we expect any good mead to be.
Right, exactly. And sometimes I don't even call it out. So we talk about the weird mells. I have an old-fashioned mead, so it tastes like an old-fashioned, and it's basically a lightly caramelized bochet in a rye whiskey barrel with cherry, orange, and bitters. But I don't call out that it's caramelized or a bochet. I just call it an old-fashioned. But there certainly are some caramelized notes in there. I'm sorry, you said about Sergio?
No, Sergio was saying, can we discuss if there's a correct way to pronounce it? Is it bochet or
I'm looking it up right now.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's bochet because it sounds like a French word.
I think it's French.
Yeah, it's French.
Right. Here, I'll tell you in 28 seconds.
28 seconds.
Well, I typed it, and now I'm listening to it on.
Oh, how precise! Well, and Sergio had also asked earlier. Let's talk about our burning stories.
Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt. They're actually pronouncing it. It's a French-sounding woman, bochet. More like boo instead of bow, like scary boo.
Yeah.
Like boucher? Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that would be in keeping with the French pronunciation, wouldn't it?
That's kind of depending on whether you're French from France or French from Quebec.
Canada.
Yeah, French Canadian.
Because French from Quebec could be bochet, not boucher.
Yeah.
Boucher would be more French from France, I think.
Yeah, French as opposed to
And we do
Canadian
anglicise it to a little point, so we can say bow instead of boo, but we do tend to keep the A rather than turning it into et.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I automatically went to bochet, but that was 4
French.
years of high school French that basically forced me to go there. So.
Yeah, I tend to
Provided it's
default to
French
reading
and
it
not
like
Dutch,
a French.
because if it was Dutch, it would be bochet.
Fair.
Yep,
It really depends on what language it comes from.
Yeah, I don't tell anybody they're wrong if they say bochette or boucher or whatever. I just pronounce it bochet, but I feel like that's what the majority of people pronounce it, so that's what I just kind of keep with. But perhaps it is boucher.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm okay with bochet. Nobody's been yelling at us about it, so.
Well, frankly, in keeping with what we're discussing on the style, it does come from France, but the recipes, and I think you might have had somebody on earlier that was basically saying that bochet might have just meant mead back at that time anyway. So it's like I don't know, maybe it's just it's our new modern term, so we can decide what we want to call it.
Yeah, that's true.
I would like to see. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I would like to see it eventually become a category on its own.
Well, that'll be up to the BJCP to see if they go there with that. We can ask them when we have them on the show in a couple of weeks.
Right.
Yeah, we're going to have some of the BJCP principals on the show. So
is that Kristen England?
Yeah, Kristen England and Julie. What's Julie's last name? I just emailed them back today. I can't remember Julie's last name, but I just emailed them back today, and we're trying to set up a date. So, yeah. Thanks.
I believe Kristen's also going to be at the Mazer Cup to talk about that as well.
Oh, cool.
He actually he uses, I think, an endearing term. I think it might be disparaging. I'm not sure, but he calls me Dr. Bochet. So I think he's okay with. He lives up here in the Minneapolis St. Paul metro area, so I think he's okay with Bochet.
Okay.
But in terms, I does and make that style.
I don't know if that.
So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, it will be. Gandalf keeps posting pictures of wrecked pots and carbonized honey and not caramelized, carbonized.
Well, frankly, it's funny, but the one thing I have multiple disclaimers on the presentation because it's really the most dangerous. I mean, maybe beekeeping, you can get some injuries on it, but it's a dangerous deal.
Oh yeah.
So it's not something to be taken lightly.
Yeah, I've actually got a candy recipe where I've got noted on it, always wear a face shield with this because it splattered and got me right in the forehead one time.
Yeah.
But I don't tend to find plain sugar is as splattery as that was. I find it just tends to bubble and boil. Just don't touch it.
Every time I hear of somebody getting splattered with it, I think that's because they probably, I don't want to use the word stupid, but I can't imagine you would feel the need to have to pour in hot water when it's still molten lava. I mean, boil some water and let it cool down until it's cool enough you can almost touch, and then you add the boiling water in there and stir it back up and you're all good.
Yeah.
There's no reason for anybody to get burnt playing with that stuff. There's just not.
Bobby says nude beekeeping and bochet making, living dangerously.
I think you could have an issue with boil over. So if you're not watching the pot, right? Or if it were actually to spill, something happen and it falls off the stove. That's worse than water. That's going to stick to your skin and burn like these business.
It's like napalm, I mean.
Yeah. It is like napalm.
Yeah.
Except it doesn't burn.
I make sure I'm home alone when I'm making a bochet. I also don't do it indoors, and when I do it, I usually do it outdoors